Ever wonder why your team doesn't listen? You can read all the leadership books in the world, but if you skip this one thing, you'll never gain elevation. And that one thing is building your employees up. Theodore Roosevelt once said, "People don't care what you know until they know that you care." It doesn't matter if you have all the answers in the world. If you can cure cancer, if they don't feel like you care about them, they're going to have a hard time following you. And just like climbing a mountain, you have to start somewhere with everyone. One of my favorite things to do is to study people, to understand what they really enjoy, and to understand where they came from. Because if you can understand where people come from, then you can understand how to help them to be better versions of themselves. Leadership is about connection. Leadership is about building that first initial relationship with somebody before you can actually drive them to be that better person that they need to be. So, influencing people has more about them feeling like they can trust you and that they know that you are out for their better interest than it is about the words that you use and being eloquent or reading all the books or having all the gurus in the world giving you all the advice. It really starts with that relationship. There's a book called Loving Our Kids on Purpose that I read a long, long time ago. And Danny Silk is the author, and it's so good. He does these conferences and he talks to families all over the world about their relationship with their kids and helps them to figure out ways so that they can get along better. And this book was actually really life changing for me. I have 5 children. We have a blended family, and we had lots and lots of struggles as we went through all of this through that entire journey. And one of the things that he talks about the most, especially with the young adults and teenagers that are especially difficult to manage in your families. And if you haven't developed a relationship with them, if you're not spending quality time on their level, not on your level, on their level, on the things that they enjoy, then they don't tend to want to listen to what you have to say. They don't tend to want to hear the advice that you think is all the most fantastic advice in the world. And that was really hard for me to understand. But I decided to try out his advice. And my oldest son can still tell you to this day, I took him out to dinner. And I do not like video games. I'm not a fan of video games. I've never really liked video games. I just couldn't get it. Honestly, when other people are playing and I watch the screen, it tends to make me feel a little bit nauseous. So I never got the whole I could play for 8 hours and not eat or drink or go to the bathroom because I'm so consumed. I just never got that. But my oldest son loves video games. Even to this day, this is how he spends his time. This is his quality of friendships that he has with other people. And so I took him to dinner and I started asking him about his favorite game. I asked him about all the characters. I asked him about all the different details of each portion of the game. And he still remembers it to this day because he knows that I hated that game, but I invested in him. I invested the time to make sure that he felt like I cared. I cared about something that he cared about. And I'm not saying that you should spend all of your time asking silly questions to your staff and wasting time. What I'm saying is that you need to figure out ways that you can establish that you actually genuinely see them and you really care. Something that I like to do is I will randomly text an employee and I will say, one of my favorite things about you is, and then I will tell them something, a characteristic that they have that I recognize, that I see, that is something positive, and that's something that I want to praise in them. And I know that this quality, that just doing that, just making them feel seen, makes them feel valued. And when people feel valued, they definitely want to do more and be more. And they're willing to climb that mountain with you. A study that I've created is called Better. It's build, encourage, train, trust, empower, and reproduce. The study is build a better life, build better leaders. Build, encourage, train, trust, empower, and reproduce. I love this study because it really reflects all of the years of what I've learned in leading people. Leading people has been something that's near and dear in my heart. I was a difficult person to lead. I certainly came from some unfortunate, broken circumstances as a child, and then it caused me to have a really difficult time as a young adult being told what to do. I especially hated criticism, any form of it, whether it was constructive or not. It always felt like an attack. It always felt like somebody was telling me that there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough, and that I needed to change. And change in my life always equaled pain. So I have a tendency to look at my staff and the employees that work for me and the people around me, just everyone, and I try to see those little glimpses of that same person that I was that rejected that kind of information, because I recognize that it's not the words that I'm using and it's not what I'm saying, it's how they're receiving it. And people will receive information and filter it. They filter it through a lens of who they were as children and how their parents treated them and how their fellow classmates treated them and all these things that built them up to be who they are today. They're going to filter through this lens, and then you're going to be the person that is harming them if in that filter it makes them feel the feelings that they felt before. So when Theodore Roosevelt said they don't care about what you know until they know that you care, that's so true, especially with young people like myself. So making sure that when you are communicating and you're developing a relationship with somebody, you're trying to build on that relationship before you're giving those criticisms. There was a speaker that I heard once. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he said this. He was a music instructor, and he said that he always made sure to give 13 compliments before he gave a criticism. As you can imagine, young teenagers are super insecure and they just don't know how to interact with the world, and they're judging themselves constantly. They're measuring their value to what they see around them. And he knew, and he was a violin instructor, which is probably the most difficult instrument that you could try to learn how to play, especially as a teenager. And it requires a lot of work, a lot of practicing. And he said that what he would do is these kids would come into their lessons, and rather than right away be like, oh, that's bad, or oh, you need to change that, or oh, your hand placement, instead, he would consistently try to give compliments. Because once you've given 13 compliments, that's about how many it takes to oversee a criticism, even if it's constructive criticism. For a really long time, I had to write it on my mirror. I wrote, constructive criticism aims to help, criticism aims to hurt. Know the difference. And I read it, I think, in the book called Start. That's where I got that from, because I understood, I realized that somewhere along the line, I had programmed myself to respond to any criticism as trying to hurt me. And I needed to reframe that and rewire it so that I could receive it. Because if I ever am going to grow in my life, if I'm ever going to be a better version of myself, I need to be able to let people give me feedback. I need to be able to let them tell me the areas where I can improve on. And if I can't receive any criticism, then that is a detriment to my development, to my ability to be a better version of myself. I need to say this, that I recognize other people that have this problem pretty quickly. I can see when they cannot receive criticism. It does not help them for me to point that out to them. It doesn't help them to become a better version of themselves or to see that differently if I point it out. Because honestly, when I was living in that state of mind, when I was filtering the world through that lens, you couldn't have told me any different. I had to get there. I had to slowly get to that place where I could actually receive that information, which is the whole purpose, in my opinion, of multipulation. Because what I am trying to do with the people around me is I'm trying to help them to become better versions of themselves, but to see it when they're ready. Like slowly undoing the layers of that filter, but not ripping it off and taking it from them, because man, they will hang on to it. Instead, I am slowly building them and helping them to see what reality is on the other side of that. And sometimes you have to try different ways of wording things. Sometimes you have to be really creative, and just trying to figure it out. But the biggest part is making sure there is that foundation, making sure that you start from the bottom and developing that relationship. You have to build in them the belief that you are there for them. In addition to that, you have to build in them the belief that they themselves can do it, that they're valuable, that they're capable, that they can do just about anything. And they used to call it the hero sandwich. Have you ever heard of this? Where you give a compliment, then a criticism, and then a compliment, so that when they go to eat the sandwich, they're like, this bread is pretty good, but I don't really like that meat. But the bread I like, so that they can swallow it a little better. It's sort of this, like, it's just spicing it up so that or a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's the same analogy. It's you're just trying to make it easier for people to digest the information that you're trying to give them, help them to see, help them to grow, so that they can be the people that you know that they can be, so that they can become who they are designed to be. And sometimes that can be difficult for them to see that. So, and then the final point of building in this training is building stability. Having systems in place that are easy to follow, having expectations and realistic, firm foundation for people helps them to trust you more. If you are wishy-washy and you go this way and then you go that way and then you go this way, it makes people feel unstable. If you're hot-headed and you lose your temper over things that other times maybe you won't, trust me, I'm a reformed, angry person. I used to definitely have problems with losing my temper, and I realized it took me a long time. I have a story about how I hurt myself. I hurt my thumb, and because of some choices, anger that I had, and I decided that right before this, I decided I was no longer going to lose my temper ever. Because honestly, if you lose your temper, you kind of lose your footing. You lose everyone's respect. People fear you. You no longer have the authority that you once thought you had. Instead, you have a bunch of people running around avoiding you because they're scared. And that's not respect, and that's not building relationships. And so I decided that I was going to make this change. And then, of course, I had to make one more decision to hurt myself in a moment of weakness, just to remind myself. And so now I have this constant reminder where I have this ligament that I tore in my thumb. And I will always forever see it. And I've lost a lot of grip in my thumb because of it. And so I actually tattooed this scripture on my hand, James 1:20, and it says, "The anger of man does not bring about the righteousness of God." And what that is saying is that people will grow and become who they are called to be, even if I don't get mad. That spoke to me deeply when I was raising children, because I would get angry an awful lot. As a matter of fact, I didn't really think I had an anger problem until I had kids, because they know exactly every single button to push, and they know how to get you, from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. And once I realized that my anger was not helping them grow into who they needed to be, that's when I decided I needed to change. And that also came from that book, Loving Our Kids on Purpose. So if you get a chance, if you're a parent, I highly recommend it. Check it out. It's a good book. Really helped me become a better parent. And I can tell you, my oldest son, when he was probably 16 when I read that book, and he can tell you to this day that he was going to move out and hate me forever. And I changed. I became a different person, and I started to realize that anger was not helping the people around me become the people that they needed to be. So that was the beginning of all of this. So this week, take some inventory on your foundation. Look around. Where do you need to rebuild? Is there relationships? Is there beliefs? Are there some systems or stability that needs to be in place? Are your responses where they should be for your staff to feel encouraged and for them to feel like they have a relationship with you? What are some things that you can do that will build the people around you up? Because at the end of the day, none of us are really climbing alone. And if this episode hit home, would you be willing to share it with another leader who's ready to build?